thank you everyone for coming along today. Important time at the moment to reflect and take stock of mental well-being, and to think of ways in which we can not only tune in for ourselves and what it means to us, but then also to extend that out further to the organisations that we work within, and the impact that we have around other people. So I'm just going to see now if I can, yeah, here we go, flip through the slides. So by means of quick introduction to me, as was mentioned, I'm Amy King. I'm co-founder and CEO of People Matter. And I started People Matter back in 2018 following a 10-year career working with large corporates around how you build high-performing teams and how you build cultures that thrive. But despite everything that I knew about my own psychology and how I applied it to workplaces, I very ironically through my career completely burnt out myself. And that is despite doing an MSc and a dissertation on burnout specifically. I've always had an interest in this area. So burnout is an interesting one, and I'm going to unpack today a little bit around what do we really mean by it, what are the things that we can think about to avoid it, for ourselves, but also within our organisations, and leave you with a few practical pointers to leave. Obviously, we've only got 10 minutes or so for this talk, so think of this as a introduction. So the starting point really is in thinking about for your own mental well-being. We all start with this idea that we all want to be at our best. You know, no one wakes up in the morning and thinks, I want to have a bad day. And for psychologists, we call this, this state of flourishment. We're not just trying to get to average. We're all seeking this idea of the good life. And if you just give yourself right now, just 20 seconds to just ask yourself, what does the good life mean for you? And if you've got a pen and paper, just write down for you what those words are that spring to mind. What do you see around you? Who is in your life? How does it feel? What do you notice? And just write down or think about, what does that good life mean for you? Let's just give you a couple of seconds to have a think about that. Now, despite our best intentions, as you know, life is pretty unexpected, and at any point in time, we can have a major life event happen. We can have a loved one fall ill. We've just been through an incredibly unusual and difficult time with the pandemic that's affected us in lots of different ways. But also we have lots of daily drains and demands, which can actually often get ignored because they feel too small to really have a care about or to think they're really that bad. But over time, they start to become bigger and bigger and bigger, these like micro stresses over time. And eventually we can find ourselves in this point where we feel like we're in a state of suffering, and we'll hear more about what we mean by this and the different stories that occur. But that's often when we think about mental health, what we kind of jump to, that state of suffering where we need to find new ways of coping and to ask for help. And we don't want to be here. So when we think about mental well-being, just as a kind of introduction to this, at any given point in time, mental health is anywhere on the scale. You can be at your best, feeling energetic, or you can feel in a point of despair. And if you ask yourself right now, you're on a scale of 1 to 10, just have a think about where you think you are. And actually you can look back at this over time and do yourself a little graph to say what's been going on in my world and what's been impacting me. And therefore, why might I be feeling this way? And sometimes there's really obvious things that spring out. I went through a difficult time, something happened, but also sometimes it's not so obvious, and it can take us by surprise as to why we feel how we do. When I talk to clients around this, and when we kind of think about our mental well-being and kind of what happens over time, is there's a lot that is built obviously within our brain. And very simplistically, from a stress perspective, we have a very primitive part of our brain, which is the stem. This is kind of black bit here, which is really about fight or flight. So on a day-to-day basis, throughout your day, you're waking up, dealing with demands, and your brain is trying to process, is this going to help me? Is this something I like and go towards, the reward system, let's go? Or is this something that actually is a threat? And that creates anxiety. It creates a sense of, I'm not okay, run away, fight. And when we think about mental well-being, that's a very positive response. Stress can be a really positive thing in our lives, but where it can start to go wrong and it can spiral into a number of different things when we talk about burnout is you have one event that goes on within your day, maybe several things that occur. You start to react to try and address things. You find yourself making a change of sorts, but you're not getting the results that you suspect. You throw more energy into what you're trying to do, and over time, we can find ourselves in this doom loop where we're working harder, we're pushing more demands are coming our way, and our sense of being able to cope effectively starts to erode. And some of that is just day-to-day stuff, but also where we have these big life events, we can start to find ourselves in this downward spiral. And this is basically where I found myself in back in 2017. I was in a job which required overseas travel. I was working long hours. I was commuting from Bristol to London 3 days a week. My day was ridiculous. I was finding myself working 12 hours at least every single day. And you look at it and you think, well, of course, that's really stupid. Of course, that's going to happen. But I think added to that, I was in a job that I started to disengage from. I would literally wake up every day and it was like a deep breath of, how am I going to get through the day? Because it was so back to back. And for whatever reason, I just kept paddling and kept trying to get through it and kept thinking, if I just get to this bit, I'll be okay. But what you don't realize over time as you kind of endure through that level of stress for so long is actually your whole way of thinking narrows. So all of your healthy stress responses around this is something I need to spring into action for starts to become something that gets overwritten, and you just start to disengage. So just in terms of what burnout looks like, this is a particular story. This individual started to feel they were failing at their job. This isn't me, this is just an extract. They lost their confidence. They felt they were doing the bare minimum, and it started to affect other parts of their life as well. So anxiety was occupying their mind, and it was a bit of a never-ending spiral. So what are the 3 things to look out for in terms of burnout? How do you know if you're burnt out? The first is you feel exhausted all the time. You might regenerate some energy from a weekend, but ultimately a weekend, a holiday doesn't get you back to feeling yourself. The second thing is feeling detached. So you start to feel like nothing you're doing really feels meaningful, and you start to feel quite negative. So I had loved ones, recognize that I was being really negative and really reactive and emotional to different situations. And the third one is low accomplishment. So you feel that a lot of things that you're doing are not really, meaningful and worthwhile. So it's pretty much where your demands exceed your capacity to cope. Now, where I went wrong for me was I thought I was being resilient and I was powering through every day. But there's 5 key things just to think about for yourself or people you know. Are you tolerating unhealthy conditions that actually don't serve you? Just endurance isn't resilience. You're pushing yourself too far, too much. You believe you don't have resilience, but actually you can. There's a misconception often that if you burn out, you can't hack it and you're weak, which is where the stigma comes in. Not true. We can all burn out and be high performing. And the other misconception is stress is bad. That is not true. We can actually be brilliant and at our best and feel stressed. So just 4 key things to think about in terms of building resilience and being at your best. The first is think about your pressures. Are they helping or hindering you, and are they overwhelming? The second is, have you got positive boosts in your world? Even if your pressures are manageable, you need to find the things that really help drive and motivate you. So things like meaning in your day-to-day, your values. I've lost complete sight of all of these things over time. The third, which we'll hear more about today, is your emotions. Keep yourself in check and ask for help, talk to people. And the fourth is your behaviour. Are you proactively self-managing and looking after yourself effectively? The next few slides, we don't have time to go through in detail. I'm sure we'll send them around, but just as a few pointers, managing your emotions. And as a communicator as well, you can think about this for your business and your team. Notice your narrative in your mind. And if you can, try to reframe your challenges and negative thoughts into something that could be for growth. Gratitude, you've probably heard about, is a great way just to get yourself thinking positive. And there's lots of techniques with positive psychology just around bringing in the positive. visualizing success, savoring the good moments. Create a highlight reel of where you felt yourself feeling at your best. For your boosts, have a think about in your world right now. Have you got enough freedom and control, and what's your vision? Have you got growth and opportunities that you're pursuing that help you feel good? And really important, I didn't do this enough, is seek support. I ended up feeling completely isolated and alone when I felt at my worst. So build out your networks and find just that one person you feel you can have a positive conversation to. And finally, just with your own behaviours, the very simple ones here is self-manage. So this is about seeking some control, setting healthy boundaries in your life, finding ways to cope. And then self-care and the personal care side is much more about the typical well-being stuff. So don't put your needs last. This is exactly what I did. Everything about me, I literally put to the back of my life, and it was all about everyone else. So I was giving, not helping myself find the right kind of support systems, and exhausting myself. So think about those two things in what you do. And that, I believe, is everything that we have time for. So try not to get sucked into the workaholic land, and just think about what's going to help you love life. Think back to those things that help you be at your best, and help you to kind of look after your well-being as a whole. So just a few pointers there. We don't have time for the depth today, but you can also apply everything that I've talked through today to your work, and to your teams and to your organisation. And that's exactly what we do at People Matter. We measure mental well-being across those 4 areas, and then we provide insights to individuals to help you manage and improve mental well-being. And we also look at it culturally, so that you can start to be proactive within your business. Thank you, everyone. I will hand back to you guys on the floor, and hopefully I've not overrun too much. Thank you.